Hello, Geneva, and welcome back to the Sports Shield podcast. Today is Friday, April 29th, and let's dive right into it. Last night was the first round of the NFL draft, and we're going to kick it off with some trades that happened. It was a trade-filled night. There were 9 in total, and the first one that we're going to talk about is A.J. Brown going to the Eagles for a first-round pick.
This is a great trade for the Eagles. Instead of getting a prospect that you need to develop, you get a receiver that has proven himself the last couple of years, and he's a perfect counter to what Devontae Smith is. He's a huge receiver that can go up and catch contested catches, and pairing him with Devontae Smith will be a great duo in the NFL.
Yeah, and now you have a whole draft ahead of you still. I mean, there's a lot of picks that you can still make, and I think A.J. Brown is going to be just terrifying with Devonta Smith across from him and Miles Sanders in that backfield. And then you have the X factor in Jalen Hurts. You don't know what he's going to do. That could be good. That could be bad. But I'm looking forward to seeing A.J. Brown on the Eagles.
Yes, this trade puts the pressure on Jalen Hurts though, because now he really has no excuses. He has one of the best receiving cores in the league with the addition of AJ Brown, and the running game last year was one of the best in the NFL. So the pressure is on Jalen Hurts to perform this year.
Another big headliner about last night's draft was the fact that there was only one quarterback taken in the first round, and it wasn't even high up. It was all the way down at pick 20 to the Saints. Now, I'm not the biggest Steelers. Sorry, I'm not a huge fan of Kenny Pickett as a player. He is already 24 years old. I mean, personally, if I'm in the Steelers spot, I would have just offered that first round pick to the Packers for Jordan Love. I don't know if they would have accepted that, but I believe that's what they should have offered because Jordan Love's almost a year younger than Kenny Pickett, and he's had 3 years to develop in an NFL scenario.
I have to agree, but I had the Steelers picking a quarterback at this position. I just didn't have them picking Pickett. I had them picking the project of Malik Willis. You sign Mitchell Trubisky this offseason, who is a starting quarterback that can win you a couple of games, especially with those weapons in Najee Harris, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson. So I thought that they would go with the project and start working him into the NFL slowly. But Kenny Pickett is a day one starter, and if they think they have their QB, then they think they have their QB.
So now onto the winners and losers of the draft. The winners, first up, is the Ravens. I think they had a great draft. Tyler Linderbaum was one of the best linemen in this draft. He was just center, so that caused his position to fall. And Kyle Hamilton, same scenario. One of the best players in this draft, but his position, safety, caused him to fall. You cannot teach 6'4", 225.
That is very true. The Ravens pick up the best players at each of those positions. Kyle Hamilton is by far the best safety in this draft. And last year, the Ravens really struggled defending the pass. Yes, it was because they had a lot of injuries, but they also didn't have much talent back there in the secondary. So adding Kyle Hamilton is a huge add. And Tyler Linderbaum is also the best center in this draft. And to be able to pick him up for pretty much Marquise Brown, who was a good receiver, but not a great receiver, to be able to shore up that offensive line to help your pass and run game is a huge addition, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I feel like for the Ravens, wide receivers are simply valued less. They are a run-first team in this pass-first age we are in, and I think that Tyler Linderbaum is going to increase their offensive productiveness by a significant amount, more than Marquise Brown would have. And next up is the New York Giants. I think they had one of the best drafts last night. They didn't make any trades. They stayed steady after getting a first-round pick from Chicago last year, and they got Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau.
I have to agree with you here. The Giants not having to trade out of their picks and getting two of the best players in the draft. Kayvon Thibodeau, who is a freak of nature on that defensive side, will be able to get after the quarterback, and it is what the Giants really needed. And Evan Neal, getting him at 7 when he was projected to go top 5 is a great pick. This really shows that the Giants are trying to set a tone, that they are trying to build both lines of the football.
So next up is another New York team that I think did great, and it was the Jets. I think they had a really good draft. Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson. So we have the Wilson to Wilson connection now, and Jermaine Johnson, who had a sudden slip for no apparent reason.
Yeah, I think they got 3 top 10 players in the draft. Garrett Wilson was my third-ranked wide receiver in this draft. Sauce Gardner, I thought, was arguably the best player in this year's draft, along with Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau. And getting him at 4 after Derek Stingley gets picked is a great pick for them. And then Jermaine Johnson, I thought he should have gone to them at number 10, but instead they trade back into the first round and pick him up at number 26, which is, in my opinion, one of the biggest steals of the draft.
Both New York teams look to have a bright future ahead of them. I don't know how many times other analysts have said this, but I really think this is true this year.
Next up are the losers of this year's draft. In my opinion, the biggest loser is the Packers. They had 2 first-round picks to pick Aaron Rodgers' replacement pick their replacement for Devontae Adams, and with both picks, they picked defense, which isn't a bad thing. But next year, their offense is not looking very good without Devontae Adams.
I feel like they just approached this in the wrong idea. They were definitely coming up to this draft and saying, we've locked Aaron up for the next 4 years. We don't have to worry about keeping him happy anymore like they have in years past. And they still didn't pick well then and focus on defense. Their defense hasn't made much improvement, and it's still been the weak point on their team. But losing so much, their top 2 wide receivers in this year's offseason, and not deciding to try and replace them early in this draft, I think it's a mistake they're going to regret, and I think it's going to come back to bite them this year.
Yeah, I have to agree. The other loser that we have for this draft is the Texans. I think they reached really hard on Derek Stingley Jr. He's a good corner, but he hasn't had the same production that he's had since his first year in the league. So I think it was a questionable pick, especially with Sauce Gardner, who, in my opinion, is the better cornerback. And overall, I don't think cornerback is necessarily the biggest need for them. They could have went pass rusher, which is a much bigger need for them, because a cornerback may make an impact this year, but a pass rusher will really make an impact this year. And the other player that they picked was Kenyon Green. They reached hard on him. He was projected to go early second round, late first round, and they got him mid first round. Now, there is something to be said about picking the player that you want, or getting the player that you want, but I feel like the Texans could have traded back to get this player.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up the first round of the NFL draft. Now, there's a whole lot more to talk about coming in these next 2 days of this draft, with players such as Malik Willis falling out of the first round, which I think is something that will be talked about for years. And I think if he goes to a team like Tampa in the first pick tonight, we're going to see a Patrick Mahomes-esque impact in 2 years after he learns under Tom Brady. Now we're going to the NBA. Suns versus Mavs is going to be the first match of the second round. So that's going to be a pretty high-powered matchup.
Yep, the Suns beat the Pelicans without Devin Booker, and the Mavs move on to beat the Jazz without Luka Doncic. This will be an interesting matchup, clash of two very good teams.
Philly versus Heat, another one. James Harden has not been playing up to his expectations, but the team around him has been playing up to make up for that. And I think going against this Heat team is going to be a fun matchup.
Yeah, Joel Embiid has been sensational this postseason, but the Heat are incredible. They have so many guys that they can throw at you. They are such a well-balanced team. So this will be a great matchup between the 1 and the 4 seed.
And then the final matchup that we're going to talk about is final set matchup is Celtics versus Bucks. I think that's going to be a crazy high-powered matchup. 2 teams that could have easily both been considered number 1 seeds if the season had been longer.
Yeah, the Bucks lost Chris Middleton last round, and it does not look like he will be playing this round. So this match will be much closer. The Celtics prove that they can D up against any team in the league by beating the Brooklyn Nets last round, who had KD and Kyrie. So I think this will be a very exciting matchup between 2 Titans in the East.
That's all the news we have for you today. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the draft. Enjoy the NBA. And see you guys next week with another Sports Shield podcast.